Are you looking for a way to scale your short-term rental business and buy more properties? Well, co-hosting might be the right fit for you. Welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast with Joe Roney. This episode of the Co-Host Coach is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents. If you're looking to buy a short-term rental, then contact the STR Savvy Agent team at savvy.realty.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Co-Host Coach. I am Joe Roney and super excited to be here today because today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is revenue management. And we're going to talk about it for a couple of reasons. You know, as a co-host, and, assuming you're watching this podcast because you either are a co-host, are aspiring to be a co-host, or, or maybe you're looking to hire a co-host, any which one of those doesn't matter. The bottom line is, how are you as a co-host or the co-host that you're hiring going to differentiate themselves from the competition? And, one of the biggest things that we have seen make a huge impact over the past couple of years as, more saturation and, more properties to compete against, more better properties compete against, you can definitely make sure your property is better than everybody else, which is a great way to separate yourself and be better, right? But a lot of people are doing that now. A lot of people are putting in pickleball courts. A lot of people are putting in game rooms. And 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the road, all of the houses in your competition are going to have all the same amenities that you have. So how are you as a co-host going to continue to differentiate yourself and make sure that you are staying ahead of the market? And revenue management right now is one of those big deals. And it's a big deal for multiple reasons. And I just honestly today had a couple calls with investors, one that was looking to hire me as a co-host, one that they were managing themselves and just, getting some tips and tricks of what they can do a little better. Neither of them even used a dynamic pricing tool like Price Labs, Wheelhouse, anything like that. And I was just like, okay, well, that's step number one, right? But a lot of people think, oh, I got this great dynamic pricing tool. I can put in my minimum. I can put in my maximum. I can put in, what I think should be the median, and it's going to adjust everything for me. And it's a good guide, but what I've learned and what most have learned over the past couple of years is there is so much more involved in revenue management than just having a dynamic price tool. If all you're doing is using a tool like Price Labs and putting in your basic rule sets and setting it and forgetting it, you are not ahead of the competition. Everybody's doing that. Yes, there's still some people that are pricing their properties, at whatever price they feel, like the person that I talked to earlier today. But a lot of people are using Price Labs and Wheelhouse and they are getting great results, but now they're as good as you if you're doing the basics. So what are you doing to get to the next level? And it comes with a lot of different things. There are some really, really great revenue managers out there. Emil Sakal, Jake Cohen, Joel Verinder, I think. I mean, there's probably dozens, if not hundreds of them out there right now. I mean, there is a lot of really good revenue managers out there that can do your revenue management for you if you don't want to do the work. And when I say do the work, it means, you have to go in there at least 2 to 3, if not 4 times a week and be checking your competition and making adjustments and using those rule sets that are going to make a big impact. A lot of people in a traditional vacation rental market like to have 4-day, 5-day, 7-day minimums, that they want people to, make sure that they get those longer stays. But I can tell you that some of the best properties out there are on the 3-2-1 strategy, three night weekends, 2 nights during the week, and 1 night gaps. And people like Emil, I know for a fact, they started that 3-2-1 strategy and then, at a higher price. And then there's length of stay discounts that they're putting in, with 5-day, if you've been there 5 days, you get an X amount of discount, 6-day X amount of discount, 7-day X amount of discount. So the longer you book, the better discount you get. And it makes your price per night even lower. So that's just one tip and trick that you can do. The night's minimum is obviously, making sure you understand what is your minimum nights. If the market is at 4 if that's the average for your 4-bedroom house or 4-bedroom cabin, then you want to be ahead of the market. You want to have a 3-night minimum because that's going to help you in the algorithm. It's going to help you in the search rankings. And it doesn't mean you're going to get 3-night stays. It means you might get 4 or 5-night stays, or maybe you might get a 3, and that's okay. But you're going to be able to fill your calendar. The other things that, we do in revenue management, and one of my favorite things, and, I have to thank Eric Corson for this because he helped me set it up last year, is as we're going into busy season, this is really important, is offering those gap nights to your current guests that are already booked at a discount. So through Hospitable, or you can do it through OwnerRez, or whatever your PMS is, probably has the ability, but I know for a fact that you can do it through Hospitable and OwnerRez. I send a message to my guest automatically 6 days before they check in. And if the night before they check in is available, they are offered a 25% discount for that night. If the night at the end of their trip is available, they'll get offered a 25% discount for that night. And on the rare occasion, but it does happen, that the night on the before and the after, they're going to get an offer to take 33% off both of those nights to get 2 more nights. I can tell you that I added 48 nights in 2024 by using the strategy. That's 48 nights that would not have gotten booked if I didn't make that offer. And, maybe 5 or 6 of those would have called and said, hey, can I stay an extra night? But when they could pre-plan ahead of time, that made a big difference. And this is really important in your drivable markets. If you're in a market, let's say Miami, this is probably not going to, be as big of a deal for you because the majority of your guests are probably flying in. They're not making that drive. So in a flyable market, you're not going to see that many added nights booked on that strategy. But for the majority of the United States, we're talking a lot of people are in regional drivable destinations, and you can make a huge, huge impact on adding those extra nights. Like I said, 48 nights last year for my co-hosting business. I have no doubt in my mind with the properties that we've picked up, we're going to exceed that and get closer to 60 or 70 nights added this year. So again, that's added revenue for your owners. That's added revenue for you as the co-host, and it's a guest that gets to extend their trip and makes them very happy, and they feel like they got a deal because they got a discount. By the way, on those gap nights, especially if there's only one, it's not a bad idea to raise that price 20%. So when you take that 25% off for that night, you're really only losing about 5% on that particular night. Still getting it booked at premium rates. And obviously, you do have to manually go in there and make that change when that happens. So whether you're doing it or your virtual assistant is doing it, you will have to manually make that change and send that request in. But that's a way that you can do some added stuff to get some added revenue. As far as gap nights are concerned, I have, 1-night minimums on all of my gap nights. Do I get many 1-night stays? No, not when most of my properties have a $400 cleaning fee or a $500 cleaning fee. I'm not worried about them booking for 1 night, but I want that 1-night gap. If I'm within 14 days of, now in the next 14 days, I have a 1-night minimum on every night. Well, I take it back. Fridays and Saturdays, I still have a 2-night minimum because I don't want to take that risk, that could happen, because it could, but I'm a 1-night minimum, leading up to that. So there's definitely a lot of, opportunity for you to get more bookings and dropping your nights down to that 1 and during those couple weeks. And again, this is something that we learned from Emil and Bill, and I've learned from other people. It really makes an impact in your search rankings and helps your properties perform better. The person that I was talking to earlier today that does not have Price Labs or a pricing tool, and she's been pricing it herself, she said, Joe, I haven't had a single booking at my property since the hurricane hit at the end of last summer. So we're talking early fall, Hurricane Helene, where there was some displaced people that stayed with her. And, this is a long time ago to go with 0 bookings. And pricing is one of the number one things. It's not one of, it is the number one thing you can do to shock the algorithm and get your listing to rise back up to the top. So, when you're talking about revenue management, there are so many things that you can do. Having these rule sets in your dynamic pricing tool, and tools like PriceLab have video after video teaching you everything that you can do. I can't say that I've watched every one of them. I've watched enough to be able to get me to do what I need to do, but you definitely need to do that. Watch those videos and learn. So, when you're talking about revenue management, yes, having that pricing tool and having those rule sets are important, but it's also just as important to know your competition. And you should be going in your pricing tool. I use Price Labs, and I have a market report for each house, so I can go into my 4-bedroom homes that are with pools, and I can look at my comps and look at those competitors, and I can compare what am I doing compared to them. I do the same thing in RankBreeze. RankBreeze gives me the rates. There's just lots of ways that you can check your competitors without having to click onto each Airbnb account and click on the dates and see what their rates are and compare it to you. So you don't have to do that. If you only have one property and you don't want to pay for all of these other properties, fine. But if you are a co-host and you are managing for other people, it is your job to be the expert. It is your job to know the competition, to understand revenue management. And if you don't know how to do it, hire it out. Even if you're at a property that is making you a $1,500 a month, $1,200 to $1,500 a month, if you're hiring it out and they're charging you $150 or $175 a listing, you are still making more money without having to do all that work. Or do what I'm planning on doing. I'm going to sit down with my virtual assistant and teach everything that I know about revenue management through this season. And then hopefully by in the fall and going into next season, that virtual assistant will be able to take it all on. And, it's what these pricing, all of the pricing companies that do revenue management, they're hiring virtual assistants. They're not doing it all themselves. They can't physically do everything themselves. They are hiring people to help them, and they're teaching and training them the best they possibly can to do these jobs. So you can do the same thing. You can hire yourself a virtual assistant, teach them everything about it, and let them run with it, obviously with very good follow-up skills. But that is one way that you can do it. So, like I said, revenue management is by far the number one thing that is going to drive, additional revenue into your properties. It's going to continue to help your properties get more booked. Pricing is the number one thing that is going to affect your search rankings, all of that above. You can have the best property in the world, but if you're priced too high over the competition and you're not on page 1 or page 2, you're going to get buried and you're not going to book. So you got to be competitive. You got to know what your competition is doing. That doesn't mean you need to drop below the competition. If your house is better, it's fine to be above the competition, but you got to be somewhere in line. And when you're talking about competitors, don't look at your next door neighbor. Don't say, oh, that's my competitor, my next door neighbor, because when you're searching on an Airbnb or a VRBO platform, they're not pulling up the neighbor property. They're pulling up the market. You need to know what the properties in your surrounding 5-10 mile range are, and make sure that you can be priced competitively to beat them. So that's my take on revenue management this week. Seriously, watch some videos in your pricing tool. Get yourself on the right platform. We are in peak season. We are in March. This is the beginning of spring break. The summer season is right around the corner. We need to get our pricing done now and make sure that you're ready. So thanks for joining me this week. That is another episode of the Co-Host Coach. We'll see you next week.
Are you looking for a way to scale your short-term rental business and buy more properties? Well, co-hosting might be the right fit for you. Welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast with Joe Roney. This episode of the Co-Host Coach is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents. If you're looking to buy a short-term rental, then contact the STR Savvy Agent team at savvy.realty.